Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to introduce my two guests today. I have with me Kate Madden and Carrie Davis, who are the co-founders of Fresh Start Careers, a woman-owned boutique staffing agency that supports life science and construction management communities in the greater Philly, Mid-Atlantic region. Kate is an award-winning, published certified professional resume writer who has helped hundreds of clients in developing their personal branding materials. And Carrie has spent years in corporate development where she championed strategic staffing for specialty construction companies. Together, they have been friends and colleagues for over 20 years, and they're passionate advocates about quality career development and placement services. So ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on to the show. I just gave a quick overview of what you all do, but I'd love to sort of hear from each of you how you came into your role and how Fresh Start came to be. Whoever wants to start.
Well, this is Kate. I'll get started. So I spent about 12 years in the pharmaceutical life sciences industry, but my passion has always been in helping others with their resume and professional development. So I started Fresh Start Resumes, which was like the flagship part of our business about 10 years ago. And I really enjoyed working with my clients and helping them figure out what their stories are and their professional brands. But one of the things that I always got frustrated with was that I could help them get packaged up, but then there were no positions to help with, getting them secured. So it was always on the horizon. Something that I wanted to do was to start a staffing agency to kind of bring it full circle. And then Carrie and I are friends from high school and college, and we reconnected at an alumni event. And, the stars lined up and we both were in the right place at the right time to get the business off the ground. So about 3 years ago, we officially launched Fresh Start Careers.
And I think that you'll find, this is Carrie, that we're really passionate about networking and leveraging your personal and professional networks in your career. And so just that is an example of how meeting up with Kate and kind of talking where our passions and our career interests lie, where we were able to kind of team up and start Fresh Start with the careers side together. So my background is recruiting and hiring. I was in the construction field for over 15 years in various roles. And with the particular company that I worked for, I grew into a role where I oversaw HR and all of our hiring nationwide and for certain international contract opportunities as well. And so what I bring to Fresh Start Careers from my past experience is that of interviewing, managing our agency partners, and identifying key candidates for roles that we're now recruiting for as a recruiting company.
So can you sort of explain the offerings that Fresh Start has today? Because it's grown from obviously when it was Fresh Start Resumes.
Yes, so this is Carrie. So we provide full service recruiting and staffing services, most of which are in the life sciences, pharmaceutical, biotechnology industries, as well as construction and manufacturing. We do direct placement services. We do contract staffing, both for 1099 and W-2 roles. And we also provide some professional development services to our clients, whether it be interviewing or LinkedIn optimization type workshops for our client partners' employees. We also offer outplacement services. And Kate, you might want to touch on that one a bit more.
Yeah, so we do outplacement services, one-on-one career coaching for any impacted employees, and resume development and LinkedIn profiles. So pretty much soup to nuts for career.
Yeah, and the whole life cycle, hire to fire to relocate. Okay, excellent. So given that you see literally all sides of the hiring process, what do you see as a couple of challenges facing those that are, testing the job search waters, trying to make a change?
This is Kate. I would say that there's a lot of competition out there. It's been very eye-opening for me coming from the resume writer, career coach to the recruiter on the other side of the conversation. So I'll get inundated resumes that are coming in, and oftentimes the resumes have nothing to do, like none of the skills that we're looking for. So my inbox gets flooded with applicants that I have to weed through to find the right skills. So it's really important for the resumes to come in that are visually appealing, that have the right keywords in the resume. And I really appreciate it when somebody has done their research and is very knowledgeable about the position or what their skills are that they can bring to the table. And if they reach out directly to me as a follow-up, because we are very swamped with the applications that are coming through. So anything to set yourself apart is good from my perspective.
So you welcome people making that personal connection with you. You don't feel like it's
I do. I mean,
being bothersome or.
Right. I mean, as long as it's relevant to the position and from their understanding of what the job description says, they think they're a good fit, then I definitely welcome an outreach.
I think another challenge facing those who are looking to make a career change is that they don't know where to start. We only have so much time to dedicate, particularly if you're in a full-time position and you're trying to use your off hours to look for what's next. And so I think getting real with yourself on what your search area is geographically, what compensation, and kind of creating that roadmap ahead of time would help with that challenge of, just feeling like you're maybe bumping from job board to job board without real direction. So that I think that there are so many avenues for both in-person networking and online networking and job boards that just navigating that vast opportunity is a real challenge.
And that's a real good plug that you're making right there, Carrie, for working with a professional resume writer, because they can help the candidates figure out, what is their story, what direction do they want to go in, and have a concise message that they want to convey to the recruiters that are out there.
Well, and what you say also goes beyond the messaging, because there's other deal breakers that you need to figure out probably before you jump in, like where do you want to live? What your salary rate, what kind of company do you want, big or small? Knowing your parameters, I think you need that before you start diving in to the networking front. Although you can use networking for informational interviews to get more details about a company, but at least it'll help you to feel like you said you're not bumping from one side of the road to the other without a real direction.
Yes, absolutely. I think it helps target the search, and anything to make the process easier is a good thing.
Do you see, in terms of, you mentioned, Kate, at the beginning that there's a lot of competition out there. This is, a really strong job market. Do you feel that there are more candidates than roles?
I think it is a strong job market. I think especially in the construction industry where we are right now, you cannot go fast enough to get the right candidates there. And we're encouraging our clients, our corporate clients, to do everything possible to speed up the process, because if we have a great candidate, they might not be there in a week because other places want to hire them as well.
Yeah, that might be one of the industries where it's an exception, but there are definitely more jobs than there are talented, qualified candidates.
Wow. Yeah. And you're right. The economy determines a lot of this stuff. So really good point. So maybe it's a repeat of that, but what do you find your clients, either on the employer side or the job search side, are there things that you find that they're just caught off guard by, that they're surprised by when they get started?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind that I tell clients often, and they're surprised on the recruiting side, is that the average recruiter spends 6 seconds a resume. We are inundated, whether it's through the job boards or our own applicant tracking system, from our website, from all the funnels coming in to bring qualified applicants and resumes to us, that, and when you've been in the business for so long, you can go through a resume, you know exactly what you're looking for. So I think that they're all often surprised that that's how much time they get to make a first impression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolute flip. And do you find that you are reading more and more, but in those 6 seconds, do you print them out, or that you read them on your phone, or, how are you viewing them?
I'm on my laptop, which I'm sorry, Kate, but I usually do dedicate time to speed through them pretty quickly. So I don't review them on my phone unless something just grabs me, if it comes into my email inbox, and then, I might glance at it on my phone and then switch over to my laptop. Right. But I'm still looking at it on the computer screen. I'm not printing it.
But you're listening. Yeah. I mean, and I think screen reading we read differently. So I think it's important to note that 6 seconds on a screen is a little different than 6 seconds when something's printed out, and you have to write for screens. Your documents have to be written for that.
But I do appreciate having some margins and some spaces to take notes, because if I am going to phone screen the candidate, conduct some kind of interview, I personally do print it and I write notes right on the resume, which I'll then upload. But I like to,
That's a good point.
I still do like to have the pen and paper for an interview.
That's a really good point. Kate, do you have anything to add on that, or anything else that you find the clients come to you just thrown off by or surprised by?
I think the expectation of how long it'll take to get into a position, if you're the right candidate, it can take a couple weeks for some of our clients, and then it can take you, maybe a month or two for other clients. So, the length of time once a candidate starts to actively look for a position can be a little bit of an eye-opening experience for them.
Yeah. And do you have any advice on those people that, those job seekers that get frustrated and want to touch base, want to know what's going on, and start to panic when they haven't heard? How can they handle that without being a nuisance or feeling like a nuisance?
I think going back to my comment about feeling free to reach out to me, if we've phone screened and I've presented you to my client, I welcome follow-up, if it's once a week or, every other week, if it's particularly slow. And there's so many factors that go into placement, because sometimes it's very urgent and the client needs somebody in the position yesterday. And so they're going to be very motivated to screen quickly, interview quickly, and make an offer quickly. Whereas some of the slower ones, maybe they've got some other issues going on. Maybe they're looking to bring somebody internally through the ranks. Maybe it's not going to be a priority until the summertime and it's springtime, but they want to start putting the feelers out there. So there's a lot of different factors that are involved with the speed at which the process moves.
Yeah. Now, are you pretty transparent about where the process is laid out and where people are in the process? Does that help to calm nerves?
Absolutely. I think transparency is very important for us with the candidates and with our clients. It helps build the trust factor and put the nerves at ease, at least as much as possible, for the client or for the candidates that are waiting anxiously for the offer letter.
Yeah, no, I agree. So what advice do you have? I'm sure you get job seekers all the time that come to you and say, I'm thinking about making a change, or I'm thinking about making a career move. Where should they start?
I would say, start to do your research, get involved, follow companies online if you're interested in learning more about them, attend networking events if you can. Just do as much research as you possibly can, because there are a lot of skills that are transferable from one industry to another. But, making those personal connections will get you much further along than, just sitting there and applying on job boards.
Yeah, to echo Kate, my advice was going to be make sure that your approach is well-rounded. I'd also suggest maybe contact local recruiters that specialize in your industry, or at least find out who they are, in addition to, looking out for those networking opportunities where you can be in person. Think about what you can do online. Just try and think as deliberately and strategically as you can about what you want to do.
Volunteering for different events. For example, we belong to an organization called Life Sciences PA, and there are constantly opportunities available for people that are in transition who want to help out at an event. And that's a great way to build relationships, because if you're helping out an organization with a major event, you can mingle with the attendees and you can show the organizers that you're serious and dependable.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that have the really good connections and could put in a good word for you somewhere. And so Carrie and I point to get involved with the industry associations that make sense for our industry. So we're involved with a handful, and we try to attend as many events and get on the steering committees and get involved. And that's great for us for business development, but it's also great for people that are in transition that maybe are nervous to go to a networking event and say what they do. They don't have an elevator pitch, or they're embarrassed that they don't have a position to say, oh, well, I work here. But if they're helping out at a networking event or an industry event, it kind of takes the edge off and gives you more opportunity to show your value.
And in addition to that, it gives a nice current point that someone could add to their LinkedIn profile, or as appropriate to their resume, that gives the reader a sense that the person's well-rounded. I love seeing that people are involved in volunteering opportunities or just things that are local to them or industry specific. Yeah. To me, that's excellent to see in somebody's background. So especially to make it current, you can go, if you volunteer at something, then you can kind of put that right into 2018 if it's this year. And
right.
It will jump out to the reader, no doubt.
To your point about identifying local recruiters, in my experience, sometimes you have a recruiter in New York placing with a placement in Chicago or vice versa. Where should people look for recruiters? Do you say search for them on LinkedIn, go on Twitter? Where should they find them?
Well, I think it's a combination of a couple of things. Usually, if you attend networking events in your industry, I would be very surprised if recruiters aren't there. So first and foremost, I would say get out there actually in person and see which ones show up at your industry events. They're a great place to start. I would talk with some of your peers that are in similar roles or similar industries. How did you get this job? How did you hear of it? And I think the more that you're out networking with folks, then you'll see who the players are from a recruiting standpoint. But really other than that, I think recruiters are also usually pretty good at keeping up their LinkedIn profiles. I would do some industry searches for your geographic area and then the keywords in your industry for recruiting. And probably you'll run into some folks on LinkedIn. That would be good ones to connect with.
That's really good advice. Excellent. Thank you. So my next question is the one that, I get all the time, and I imagine you get it tenfold. What advice can you give someone they are in the middle of job hunt and it is just not going well? Where do you have them? Where do they start sort of get things fixed?
This is Carrie, I would suggest to them to mix it up. I think that even going out to lunch or grabbing a coffee with one of your peers in the industry, or maybe somebody who's working in the company or in a similar role to what you're looking for, and pick their brain a little bit. If you have somebody who can kind of serve as your confidant through the job search, you can bounce ideas off of them. So in looking objectively at your search and it's been mostly online, then I think you have to put on your business attire and get out to some networking events. If you've been kind of working the circuit out in person and on the phone, you don't feel like you're really clicking with that, well then, maybe spend some time mixing it up on the job boards and going on some that you haven't been on yet. So I would say, just keep at it and, try and add some variety.
No, I think that's a good point. The whole idea of a confidant, it's really hard to job search alone. I do feel like it's something where you need other people, whether paid or friends or, just someone that you can trust to help you figure out what's going on objectively to help you mix it up, because you might not know where to start.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, your network makes you stronger. So if you have someone that you can, whether it's you can vent to or that, eventually you can celebrate with, it makes all the difference. I think sometimes you might even to proofread an email to the hiring manager.
Yeah, when you want
or your thank you, or take a look at your thank you note, or just someone who can remind you to send the thank you note.
Yeah,
it's good to have some kind of partner.
No, I agree.
This is Kate. I agree with you 100%. And I would just add that your network is so important to grow and foster, even when you don't need a job or you don't need anything out of it. It's a two-way street. And, I think that's one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of people that come to some of the networking events, they just want to find a job and they don't, they're not there to mingle or get to know people, but they're like, can you get me a job? Can you get me a job? And I think that it's important to foster those relationships, even when you're 100% happy with the position that you're in, because you never know what's going to happen with the company or, life changes, things can happen. But if you are continually taking care of your relationships and just checking in with people, it doesn't have to be every month or, even once a year, you could just say, hey, how are you doing? Those are the relationships that will be very, very helpful and even critical in your job search if and when you do need to make that jump. So like Harry said, go grab a cup of coffee with a colleague of yours, but just go in there just to grow the relationship and nothing else.
No, so nurture it when you don't need a job so you can tap into it when you do need one. So true. Mm-hmm. So what about those people who have so many different skills? They can go in a ton of different directions. How do you recommend they go about figuring out what they want to do next or targeting specific roles? I think, Kate, you mentioned right off the bat that a lot of times you see several resumes that don't seem to align with the job you need placed at all.
Mm-hmm. I think having a focus is good. Back to putting my resume writer hat on, I always suggested to my clients that they had targeted resumes or industry-specific resumes so that they could show that they had a focus of where they wanted to go instead of just too generic, and then maybe missing the keywords for that specific industry. I think having some kind of focus would be really helpful in that case.
Okay.
I would add to that, I think that's where, the person has to do a bit of soul searching about, what is their passion, and what fits, and combined with, a really realistic view of what works and what fits their lifestyle or life situation at the moment. Everyone has an interest to be compensated for the work that they do. And so depending on what those diverse skill sets are, the compensation level could be very different that they're looking at. So the person has to be real about, what can pay the bills.
Right. Figure out your deal breakers. If you have to make a certain amount, then maybe X job is off the table and this one needs to be considered.
Yeah. Or maybe it's more of a geographic, maybe you have a real passion to travel with business, but if your lifestyle is one where you really need to be in the geography, either to maybe care of parents or care of children, and it just doesn't work for your situation, then I think you have to take a hard look at that before anything else. But beyond those things, I love Kate's point about having targeted resumes. We do receive resumes as a recruiter that are a little all over the place. And if the person took the time to just really make it keyword specific toward their expertise in the industry, they have all the qualifications. They would be a natural fit for the position, but some of the experience on the resume just isn't relevant, and it dilutes from the overall message for the role.
Right. And when you have 6 seconds to look at it, it really needs to pop out.
Yeah, so remove the irrelevant stuff so it doesn't detract. You're right. You can't afford for 3 seconds spent with someone saying, what does this have to do with anything?
Right. And then it helps us because if our phone screen goes well, we're going to bundle that person up and present them to our client. So we want to be able to take the message that they're giving us and pass it along in the right way instead of whisper down the lane and have it completely jumbled up by the time the hiring manager looks at the person. So, it's really important for the candidate to know, what their story is so that we can share that story with the hiring manager and put our spin on it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. All right. So this next question is one that I get all the time. I don't know. I'm interested to hear how it impacts the industries that you're in. It's a topic of age discrimination when it comes to hiring practices. Most people think of that as you're too old, too young also is an issue. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on topic and how it's an issue or not in your industries.
Carrie, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I would be happy to. I think that as a recruiting partner to our corporate clients, they're looking for someone who's going to be in the role for years and years and years on end. They want the path of least resistance, which is to get a wonderfully talented candidate and have them being in the role for the lifetime. But that's not realistic. The median tenure for employees in the U.S. in wage and salary roles is 4.6 years. And the age bracket that goes from 25 years old to 34, the average tenure is 3.2 years. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, for folks that are 65 and over, they've been at companies 10.3 years. So more and more that tenure is, the tenure is something. So I do like to hear on the phone with somebody who's later in their career. I like to hear when it's offered, and certainly isn't something that we would ask or that's our business. But when you hear somebody say, I've got 5 or 7 years that I'm looking to give before I retire, that's a lot of time. And that's way longer than the average. And it's double the average of somebody who is just starting out. I also love hearing from young career professionals that they're looking to find a home somewhere where they can really hone their skills and, learn through, years experience. So I would say that I really don't see age playing a role other than our client companies. It seems more and more they don't have time to train folks. They want somebody who can come in and start performing on day one. So I think that, just relevant experience goes beyond anything. That's the ultimate is just, relevant experience and adaptable to the role. That said, I am a job hopper. Job hopper discrimination, I think is really relevant. I don't want to see somebody who job hops. That's the person I wouldn't call.
When I first started writing, in the 20th century, job hopping was 5 to 7 years. Now people think that that's a nice little tenure. What do you feel like? What's the threshold to be considered a job hopper? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? Or in your view?
In my view, it's when the roles have been, I'll say 0 to 2 years for a pattern of several years. So if I look back over the last 8 to 10 years and the person has 5+ roles, I'm concerned about that, except if it can be explained through maybe contract opportunities. They just, took a little bit more unconventional path, but you almost have to be able to see that explanation. But no, I think when I see that folks have been somewhere 4 years, 5 years, maybe they had a stint of 2 years at one place, but the next one is, again, 4 to several years, that's really the norm. I think that shows the person's a loyal employee.
I have to agree. I have to agree with you, Carrie. But, coming from the pharmaceutical industry, there's a good amount of job hopping happening in that area. And especially, as you mentioned, the contract work. So it's very common to see, a 6-month contract, a 12-month contract. So you'll see more jobs, more roles on those types of resumes. But as long as there is a clear path or an explanation, this contract was finished up, the project was ended, but I moved on through the same contracting company to another client in the same role. So as long as there's a way to explain that instead of I was fired for bad behavior or whatever, you want to have a good reason if it's project based. And I think that's where the human voice of the cover letter is important. And I know that's a very controversial, sometimes the recruiters want to see it, sometimes they don't want to see it. You put all this time and effort into writing it. But oftentimes when I am looking at a resume and I see something that catches my eye, I will go back and look at the resume first and then look at the cover letter second to see if there's any additional information that can explain the transition from one to the next. And that's what Carrie and I do when we're doing the phone screens, is to figure out how did you get from point A to point B, and kind of pave that path for the hiring manager when they read the summary to say, oh, that makes total sense that this person ended up in these places. So I think it is, again, industry specific and subjective.
Well, it's interesting because, I work with people all across the age spectrum, and the younger groups do tend to job hop more, in part because that's the way you get raises. There's so much wage stagnation within companies. And so my thought is to include language in the cover letter that expresses those points that you brought up, Carrie, of I'm looking for a home to hone my skills. I have 5 to 7 years, do you think that kind of language, I know cover letters don't always get read, but do you think that that's an opportunity to insert that language if you have, because your company just won't give you a raise?
I do. Absolutely. I think that, maybe another thing to offer if you have the opportunity to talk on the phone with someone too, is the power of your references. I think that, you can demonstrate that you are a loyal employee, but as you're starting out your career, in order to kind of make a name for yourself and get raises and compensation increases, maybe even title changes, you need to be able to look at those at opportunities. So I think that they're a little bit more opportunistic. I think that, find a way, or at least put your resume and your LinkedIn profile and your cover letter through that lens and that filter. It's how would I explain this? And then be really clear with your message.
That's a really good point. Now, I do this with some people's resumes and it's applicable, but I'll put recommendations from references, not say their names, but maybe their titles in the resume. So people see little snippets of what people, just to speak to their character, their loyalty, all those things, and then try to dispel maybe some preconceived notions that you might see just by looking at dates and other things. Doesn't always come through on ATS, but do you see them when they, once they've gone through ATS or before ATS?
I love that, Virginia.
I do like them.
I absolutely do. If I have a candidate that I preliminarily like their resume for, and I think I speak for Kate as well, we really do peel the onion to see what else is there, positive and negative. So cross-checking the person's LinkedIn profile is a given. I mean, that's my second click, is to find them on LinkedIn. We Google them. We read all attachments, whether they be cover letters, project lists. If there are links to portfolios, sometimes in the more creative roles, candidates will have a portfolio link, any media that's on their LinkedIn, anything that I can find out about the person. If the person was an Eagle Scout and there was a write-up in the local paper, we will find it. We will find it. So, a recommendation from a supervisor or peer, somebody who's actually worked with the person, that is just a deposit into the positive bank for that candidate. So
Right.
I absolutely think it's great to include it. And I would also recommend that maybe the candidate call attention to it. Let's say that they applied for a role through Indeed or one of the kind of bigger job boards that's online. Sometimes their resume will be attached as a PDF, but sometimes it comes through the filter of the job board and is a little bit more plain vanilla in nature with the layout and the format. So I always ask a candidate, what tools, what resources do you have? Can I get your copy? So that would be an area to point something out, but maybe the person to be a little bit more proactive too, if they are talking with a recruiter, make sure that they do have a copy of those items.
Okay, that's a really good point. And you've called out the importance of make sure that your social media reflects what you're saying about yourself, because you are going to Google them. You are going to check their LinkedIn. It will reinforce for my daughter who she's getting her gold award in Girl Scouts that it's important because that stuff shows up in the paper. And it's how you build your social proof that you are who you say you are.
Right.
Yeah,
and our
absolutely.
clients are looking. They're going to be checked. They want to know that what you have on your LinkedIn is matching with what's on your resume. And if there's any gaps, they are very cautious about, who they're bringing onto their teams. And so, Carrie and I are working very hard to fill in those gaps and make a clear storyline. But having a very clean social media presence is critical.
I mean, just one little thing that would put doubt in the mind of the recruiter or hiring manager is something that, the candidate really wants to avoid. I mean, every now and then I'll get their personal email address is something totally bizarre, wacky,
Crazy,
and they might not even have it as the personal email address on their resume. But when they applied for, an Indeed account 10 years ago, it's what they used. It does come back to haunt you. So check,
oh my God, I never thought of that.
You just have to check what you have out there in terms of your email addresses. Your Facebook picture is public domain. So, all of those things, your activity on LinkedIn, if you comment on other people's posts, every now and then you have somebody who, they seem normal as rain, and then you get something completely bizarre, and it does throw up a red flag. So I would very much encourage someone embarking on their search to do a deep dive on themselves online. Google yourself, look at your Facebook from an objective point of view, dig up whatever articles are out about you from your past.
That is really good advice.
Know that stuff follows you. And, people are human. There's going to be, perhaps something negative out there about a potential candidate. But, be ready to professionally and appropriately address it if you're questioned about it, or if you feel that you need to call it out because the person's going to uncover it anyway. I say, be open with it and get the chance to tell your side of the story.
No, good point. I feel so bad for younger people because they have so many more social media sites to manage than we
really
do.
Me too. Everything's captured for them.
Yes.
And speaking of that, so privacy on the flip side. So for me as a resume writer, I used to encourage my clients to have all of their contact information in the top part of their, the first part of the resume. And now on the recruiting side, I don't care what street address they live on. And in fact, I encourage everybody to get rid of their street address, because from my perspective now on the other side, I'm looking for zip code and city state, and that's it.
City, state, and zip.
Yeah, city, state, and zip. And, so if your resume is out there on the different platforms, then it includes your address, your home address. It should give you pause. So from a privacy perspective.
No, that's a good point. And it takes up extra space that you could use for something else. So
right. So from what we use, we need city, state, zip, or, zip code, a phone number to reach you, an email address, one that's professional, like Harry said, and even set up an email address just for job search. And, it could be Virginia Franco, resume writing at gmail.com,
right,
whatever it is, but just something that's very clear that doesn't give away anything else. And then your LinkedIn URL, because as soon as we go through that resume in 6 seconds and we say, okay, there are the keywords, this person sounds like a really good fit. Now I need to go find them online. If there can be a URL to your LinkedIn profile, and preferably, the vanity URL, that makes it so much easier for us to just click on it and find you and line it up and make sure that everything is what it's supposed to be.
Will you discard a resume that does not have a city, state, and zip for those people that are, either want to hide where they live or they live somewhere else and don't want that to show up loud and clear, so they just don't put it on at all?
I probably wouldn't contact them. But I would if I know the story. So maybe the person in their cover letter says, my family is relocating and that's why we're exploring it, or maybe they put down the city, state, and zip of where they are going to be relocating if it is indeed imminent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fewer and fewer companies relocate folks. I know the lion's share of the companies that we work with wouldn't relocate somebody. So really 9.5 times out of 10, I'm looking for somebody who is local to the job.
Local or willing to pay their own. That's real. I hadn't thought about putting the target city, state, and zip on there.
Right. So if we're searching, we're going to be searching for a certain radius around a certain town. And so if there's just nothing listed, that person's resume wouldn't show up in the search results.
Right. Now, LinkedIn, you can put a city, state, and zip, but then you can also customize, you can notify recruiters if you're considering these other cities. Is that something that you've taken advantage of, or do you use the resume as the first point of search?
We use a couple different platforms. So LinkedIn is certainly one of our top platforms that we use. Mm-hmm. Carrie mentioned Indeed. We have our own job board applicant tracking system. So, we try to cover as many bases as possible for the search. Okay. And then we also tap into our own personal network from the face-to-face events that we go to. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all, but
okay. All right. So the next thing I want to ask you about is, because people come to me with this, I want to get a new job. I'm contemplating career change. What do I need? Can you name sort of, distill one or two tools that a job seeker needs to have in their tool belt during this journey?
I would say having a full LinkedIn profile and feeling comfortable on that platform is critical. Yeah. And then as far as resources, industry publications, I would say having the trusted team that you can reach out to, whether it's a family member or a colleague or a friend, to bounce ideas around. And then here's a shameless plug, but ask the experts from the National Resume Writers Association. I think that platform that was just launched last month is going to be a very important part of the job search for our clients and candidates. I think that's a great service. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the questions that people have been asking have been incredible, and a lot of experts weigh in on that. It's a great free resource, so thank you for that plug. Carrie, how about you? What tools do you feel like job seekers need in their tool belts?
Sure. Well, in addition to what Kate said, I would add 3 things. First is an updated, modern, professional resume that you can easily update yourself, or that if you're working with a professional, can easily be updated to maybe fit or target a specific opportunity. I'm going to say your business attire or interview suit at the ready.
Ooh,
you don't want that. You want to feel confident. I mean, the goal is to get in front of the employer. So if you have the chance to do so, be able to, if they ask you to interview the next morning at 10 a.m. or that afternoon at 4 p.m., you better be able to reach in your closet and throw it on and feel great.
Oh,
so
I just got a pang of stress just hearing that.
So, and again, if you're launching that, you're committed to that next move. It's time to, I'd say, freshen up that career wardrobe.
It's an investment. You're right, absolutely. And at the ready versus running to the store and then freaking out that there's nothing in your size or that you like.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. It also, it all adds to your confidence. You want to feel great about your interview, and your first impression, you want to be a good one. The last thing that I would add is for in-person networking, go to Staples or a copy center and make up some really simple black and white business cards with your contact information. So I would recommend your name, your cell phone, your email address, that someone could contact you to get in touch with you. So many times we'll meet people that are in transition or interested in making a move at a networking event, and they have nothing to share with their contact information. So if you're going to be getting out there in person, have a card you can share with people.
That's a really good idea. Yeah. And you're right, you can get them at Staples, Vistaprint. I mean, there's so many pretty cost-effective places to have that done.
Yeah, Vistaprint, I was just on the phone with them today. They are a fantastic company, and they have top quality and very affordable products.
Yeah.
And then there's another company that I used a couple of years ago called Moo, MOO.com.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about them.
Yeah. And they do kind of alternative eye-catching cards and paper products out there. So you can slightly different shape or something that catches somebody's eye. So
a little bit more creative, right?
Yeah. If you're in the creative world, that might be a great vendor for you to get your business cards there. But don't bring a resume to a networking event because nobody's got the space or the pocket to carry that around in. So business card is the best way to kind of start that conversation. include your LinkedIn URL on that business card as well, so that when we do connect with you, we can send you an invitation to connect, and then we can check out your profile and read up more on your background and see if we have anything that fits.
What about those one-pagers that I've put them together for people. Do you think that networking events are the place for that, or that's even too much?
I think that's probably still a bit much because you're really just there to meet people and maybe exchange the business cards. But I think that does serve a purpose in the follow-up. So the next day, I always like to send my invitations within 24 hours and reference, where I met that person and say, oh, it was so great to meet you at such and such event at this location, so that if they don't get onto LinkedIn or check their email very much, they'll at least remember you because you've referenced when and where you met them. But at that point, then you can say, here's my executive bio document. These are the companies that I'm targeting. If you have any leads, I would really appreciate an introduction, and please let me know what I can do to help you, to kind of keep the relationship going.
Yeah, I would completely agree with Kate. I did think of one exception, which would be if it is an event that is a career expo, if there are going to be hiring managers, if there are going to be hiring managers that are equipped, to be able to accept a resume, definitely bring your resume and a lot of copies of it. So we see a lot of those on college campuses or, alumni events, different job fairs, that I would say in that environment, it is the norm and it's totally appropriate. You should have your resume.
Okay. That's excellent advice. Thank you. So what is next for you all? You've given so much advice on how to help other people make their next moves. What do you guys see as a next step for Fresh Start?
I think we're just going to keep doing what we're doing and hopefully continue to grow our business and help our clients and our candidates find the right fits for each other.
Absolutely. I would agree with Kate. For the greater Philadelphia area and the Mid-Atlantic region, we've carved out a nice name for ourselves in our respective industries. And, we want to be able to help even more client partners and prospective, employees link up with great roles.
That's wonderful. If people live in your area, in the Mid-Atlantic region, and they want to get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn. Okay. You can find Carrie and I are there every day, all day, pretty much. You can also find us on our website, which is www.freshstartcareersusa.com. We also have a Facebook page. We've got Instagram and Twitter. So we have a nice social media footprint as well.
Excellent. Well, ladies, thank you so much. You've given such amazing advice. And I'm always amazed, no matter how many times I might ask the same question, I learned something new, and I certainly did today. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having us. It was a pleasure to be on this, and thank you for inviting us onto your podcast.
Yes, thank you, Virginia. We really appreciate it, and it's an honor, and we learned from you as well. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SCIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.